Hello, this is Jade the Stone, and welcome to speedARTicles, where I talk about a piece of media that I like and draw some fan art for it. In my previous speedARTicle on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I praised its unique take on the TMNT franchise. For many old fans, some of these changes may seem rather jarring, but my main stance was that Rise was the fresh take that the franchise was long due. However, the hardest sell for most people would probably be the changes made to two of the main characters, Leonardo and Splinter, whose entire personalities were seemingly given a reset. However, I would say that these changes were for the better, and in the end, I believe that Rise's Leo and Splinter are possibly the best versions of themselves in the entire franchise. Since this speedARTicle involves a deeper character study, it comes with a warning that this video contains spoilers about Leo and Splinter's character arcs. I will do my best to not reveal any major plot points. However, I will be revealing a great deal of backstory, especially on Splinter's part. The artwork, however, doesn't contain any spoilers, so feel free to watch the speed art portion of the video without the audio or subtitles on. Now that you have been warned, let's get started. Let's first look at Leonardo. In most versions of TMNT, Leonardo is the eldest and the leader of the team. He is the do-gooder, the straight man, and the most ninja-like of the bunch. He follows most closely to Splinter's teachings and the ideals of the Hamato clan. His usual motive is trying to live up to the responsibility of being the leader. I stated in my previous video that it bothers me when a character's entire personality is their role in a story. And this has consistently been my problem with Leonardo, because what happens when you take away his role as the leader of the team? Really think about that. In most versions, if you take that away, you're left with, honestly, kind of a bland character. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Leo. No matter what, he's pretty cool. He gets epic action scenes, is a major player in key plot moments, and he's an example of the burden of being leader trope done well. However, he does remain rather stale compared to his brother's flashier personality types. In Rise, however, Leonardo may possibly be the flashiest personality type out of the four of them. Rise's Leo is for once not the leader, which is great because we finally get to see a Leo who is free from his leaderly burden. We get to see a Leo who is allowed to be a teenager. He's allowed to be a kid. He goofs off, spouts cheesy one-liners and puns, dabs in the background of fight scenes, and is a self-declared face man of the team. While some may find this shift off-putting, as far as I'm concerned, this is the most interesting that Leonardo has ever been. He's just oozing with charisma and personality, and I for once immensely enjoy him when he is on screen. Now I can understand why people may like the old ninja-y Leo better, and that's fair. Everyone is allowed their preferences. But there's one major change that I think has made Rise Leo, from a writing standpoint, objectively better. He is given an arc. Due to the fact that this Leo is not the one in charge, he no longer has that leader-like authority. He doesn't have that automatic trust from his brothers. In fact, he's rarely taken seriously by them, or anyone. And you can tell throughout the series that this deeply bothers him. He masks it a lot with humor and bravado, but the big arc for Leo in this series is him working to become someone his brothers can trust. He starts the series as the kind of guy whose showboating will often get himself and his brothers into trouble. At a few points, he so desperately wants to be seen as their champion that he throws them into dangerous situations in order to prove his worth. At times, he's even a bit awkward in battle, and he has the most trouble dealing with his mystic weapon out of them all. He's quite the underdog at first, not feeling like he has anything special to bring to the table among his brothers who each have their own thing. In the episode Portal Jacked, he gets separated from his brothers and even goes so far as to say, "I'm nothing without them." We rarely get to see that kind of vulnerability and desperation from a Leonardo. After several iterations of a Leo who is usually always right, it's refreshing to see a Leo who is unsure and has flaws he needs to work out. If there is one thing that Rise Leo maintains from his previous incarnations, It's his strategic side. Though this Leo is a bit goofier and strange in comparison, it is apparent that he's the one who thinks about the situation that his brothers are in the most. He's the one who sees the angles and tries to make a plan. The plan doesn't always work, and due to his brother's lack of trust in him, it rarely gets executed, but you can tell that there's that strategic mind working away as usual. You can see it from when he is the only one to recognize Big Mama as the villain she is, to the fact that he outsmarted Donnie, yes, Donnie, the brainy one, in layer games. This slowly builds up all the way to the point where he manages to outmaneuver one major villain and is trusted to defeat another major villain in a single episode by the end of the first season. I don't know what is going to happen in the future of the Rise storyline, but if this is a story about Leo having to work up to his leadership role, then I'm excited about it. To me, it's so much more compelling to see Leo work to becoming someone who is worthy of being listened to, rather than just automatically being handed the leadership role like he so often is. I'm not sure if he will eventually become leader or not, but either way, his character growth has been fun to watch so far, and I hope we get to see him develop further in the second season. Unlike Leo, where I initially welcomed the changes to his personality, Splinter's character really turned me off in the beginning. In fact, I thought he was downright blasphemous. Splinter has always been a wise, calm, and subtle character. He has upheld the teachings of the ninja arts as law, but has his own peaceful and pacifistic take on them. Always righteous and true, and the epitome of the wise old man trope. The Splinter in Rise is none of these things. Rise's Splinter is a lazy, old, self-serving has-been with a large disregard for personal hygiene and who really needs to get back into shape. He's the kind of guy who looked at his ancestors' ninja teachings and decided to ignore them and just do his own thing. Not only that, but he's even somewhat of a neglectful father, as he spends most of his time sitting on his couch, eating cake, and watching weird Japanese game shows all day. I was admittedly quite disappointed at first. I thought they were basically making him a joke character, but I was willing to keep watching because most versions of Splinter have him somewhat in the background a lot of the time, and since the Turtles were interesting enough characters, then I could ignore a joke Splinter. But in the same way that Rise's Leo gets a character arc, so does Rise's Splinter. As you learn more about him, you begin to understand why he is the way he is. And as I continued to follow his arc, he became perhaps my favorite version of Splinter, which is honestly really hard to do because I really like Splinter. To fully explain Splinter's arc and why it's brilliant, we need to look at where he is coming from. Early on in the series, we find out that Splinter's way of teaching his sons ninjutsu is through having them watch a series of campy martial arts action films starring a man known as Liu Jitsu. Liu Jitsu is kind of like this universe's Jackie Chan, often fighting with random objects instead of weapons. As such, we see the Turtles themselves improvising a lot of their fights with non-standard weapons, from umbrellas and slabs of meat to fish and ladders. As a huge fan of Jackie Chan myself, this is an aspect of the fight choreography that I am very ecstatic about. I also find it incredibly funny that nearly every character in the series, from the Turtles to the villains, are Liu Jitsu fans. Roughly halfway through the first season, we find out that Splinter himself was in fact Liu Jitsu. This is the key difference to Splinter's backstory. Instead of devoutly following in his clan's footsteps, he ditched that lifestyle as a young man to become an action film star. And he really enjoyed that life. We see it in the way he reminisces about the old times, how he misses that easy life and the glory that came with it. And you see the deep regret he feels at having lost it all and going from hot movie hunk to small rat man. If the audience is at all disgusted by this version of Splinter, it is only because he is even more disgusted with himself. He feels a lot of shame about what he's become, and a good part of the story involves him trying to be better. It makes so much sense why he's not the wise old man trope that we associate Splinter with. He was a flashy movie star. He didn't grow up with the kind of discipline that other Splinters had, and while most Splinters have a longtime enemy to fight against, like the Shredder, this one really doesn't. The Shredder in this version was a far-fetched what-if scenario passed down by his ancestors that he chose to ignore. In fact, most of the darker parts of his origins involve him essentially being a victim of a lot of manipulation and also unlucky circumstance. He was kidnapped, forced to fight in underground tournaments battling mystical creatures, locked away for years after refusing to fight, then was experimented on to create mutant warriors, only to then be mutated himself. Yet despite all that, he still has enough good in him to rescue the other subjects of the mutation, 4 baby mutant turtles, and attempt to raise them as his own sons. In a way, in this version, they really are his biological sons, as they were mutated using his own DNA. If Leo's core trait that has been maintained is his strategic side, then Splinter's is his fatherhood. It is oddly endearing to see Splinter as such an awkward parent. There are times where he has disagreements with his sons, and he is left there stumbling at these interactions because he is a highly imperfect person. He too has things to learn. There are times that Splinter has to apologize and make up for his mistakes. His negligence in his ninja training and in his fatherly role have consequences that he has to atone for. This puts him strangely at a similar level with the turtles in terms of development. He certainly is almost as childlike as they are. A really cool result of this is that he's a lot more joking and casual with them. He'll watch cheesy movies with them and occasionally join them in their weird shenanigans. What I at first took as a lack of closeness to his sons, his tendency to call him by their mask colors like red or purple, actually turns out to be more like terms of endearment. In turn, the turtles don't just call him Splinter, and rarely do they use the term sensei or master like in most versions. Instead, they call him an assortment of fatherly names, including Dad, Pop, Pops, Father, and Papa. It's really adorable, and I live for every minute of it. Furthermore, when you get to the point where he uses their full given names, it's always at highly emotional moments, like when he gives his sincere apology to Donatello in Turtledega Nights, or when Raphael asks him to use his full name before a huge fight in the finale. When push comes to shove, Splinter puts in the work so he can fill the role of a ninja master and a good father. From start to finish of the first season, my thoughts on Splinter did an entire 180, and I adore Rise's Splinter now. What makes Rise's Leo and Splinter the best versions of themselves really boils down to this fact. They are allowed to develop as characters and improve as people. This is something that is rarely afforded to them in any other version of the franchise. In most cases, they don't go through any changes. They start out as perfect, strong, leader-like ninjas and end more or less the same way. Yes, most Leonardos get stronger and their skills improve, and with most Splinters, we get interesting backstory reveals, but there are no large impacts to their development throughout most instances of their characters. I think the problem is that they're almost too perfect from the get-go. Rise's Leo and Splinter are allowed to be flawed. They're allowed to make mistakes and mess up. They're allowed to grow. As a result, this makes them feel more like real people and makes them so much more engaging as characters. For once, I am heavily invested in their story and interested in seeing how they'll develop further. I'm sure some people will disagree, but for me, Rise's Leo and Splinter are absolutely my favorite versions of themselves. For this piece of artwork, I wanted to draw both of them in Lujitsu's classic jumpsuit. In a way, which I'm assuming is not at all a coincidence. Just like all other Leonardos, Rise's Leo is most like Splinter. They're both flashy, charismatic dudes who like to show off, and they both go through similar arcs of having to get over themselves to become better people and more effective leaders. I appreciate that they still share that connection with other versions of the franchise, even if it is executed in a very different manner. I tried to go out of my comfort zone again for this piece to try some lettering and different lighting styles. I felt that if I was going to draw the two of them in Lujitsu jumpsuits, then I'd have to include Lujitsu's catchphrase in there as well, even though I'm still not 100% sure why his catchphrase is hot soup. Thanks so much for watching until the end of the video. If you liked what you saw and you're interested in seeing more of this kind of video, subscribe and hit the like button. If you have any requests or questions about other shows that you'd like to see me talk about or draw some fan art for, please write that down in the comments. To see the artwork I did in this video, or to see the previous video I did on Rise of the TMNT, the links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.